Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we are finally going to be talking about the newest album from Sabrina Carpenter called Singular Act 1. So I'll admit, this is the sort of review I would normally consign to the trailing edge, except in this case, I made a deal with the patron who requested it to swap it out for that bloated Zayn album that no music critic wants to touch. This is at least shorter, I will give it that. And you know what? As much as it would be very easy for me to just pass albums in this lane off as just another vanity project for an actress in between movies or TV pilots, but you know, I've been surprised in this lane before. Go back to Lucy Hale's 2014 album Road Between, a pop country debut that came right the hell out of nowhere and wound up as one of the best in its subgenre this decade. I still go back to that album. And then I noticed Sabrina Carpenter's label. And then I listened to her previous two albums, and consequently got a very distinctive sinking feeling. Yeah, folks, you might all know Sabrina Carpenter as once having one of those starring roles on Girl Meets World, but her music, which has taken up a surprising amount of her schedule and effort, it's exactly what you would expect coming out of Hollywood records. The sort of sterile, underwritten, badly produced pop pablum that you can hear chasing the trends and barely having any sort of distinctive identity of its own. I would normally be inclined to just call these vanity projects, but Sabrina Carpenter seems to have placed a lot of stock and effort into these albums, along with a lot of her own writing credits, which is probably not a good thing because the production is mediocre and trend-chasing at best, and I was not impressed by her vocals or her songwriting. That being said, look, it's 25 minutes, it's 8 songs, it cannot be that bad, right? Well, honestly, I'm a bit at a loss for words, cause what the hell can you even say about this as a critic? It's a short slice of songs that once again proves how little Sabrina Carpenter has differentiated herself from her pop peers, and finds her jogging a couple steps behind those driving success and innovation in the mainstream right now. And no, that doesn't precisely make it bad. In fact, I'd argue it might be one of her better projects to date in terms of at least raw production quality, but will anybody besides those enamored of her cult of personality come back to this album or remember it? Honestly, probably not, because it's not really that good. And for me, a significant part of this is how nakedly Sabrina Carpenter shows her influences, especially in the production. When I can pinpoint not just the artists, but the exact songs and albums that inspired certain tracks, it gets actively distracting and prompts a lot of comparisons that Sabrina Carpenter probably does not want. Now, the most immediate and blatant is how much Bad Time wants to be a cut from Taylor Swift's Reputation, from the muted auto-tuned opening to the blocky pitch-shifted stutter of the hook, but then you can go to a song like the closer, Diamonds Are Forever, and see just how much was cribbed from Ariana Grande's Dangerous Woman in a similar trap-infused cadence and groove, with the guitars and the hints of opulence coming in the strings. Or Sue Me, which with its overweight bass beat on the hook and the overlayered backing vocals, it is way too reminiscent of Demi Lovato's Sorry Not Sorry, and given how bad that song is, why would you want to rip it off? But really, the closest comparison I can make with this album as a whole is probably Camila Cabello's debut album Camila from earlier this year, or maybe that last Fifth Harmony album from 2017, except swapping out the sparse, ramshackle Latin tinges or any R&B chops with a little bit more attitude and a bit more elegance this time around. But it's got the similar overmixed trap percussion and the gratuitous effects, the drippy synth lines that are all pushed to the back, and a frustrating amount of compression and auto-tune that fails to disguise how Sabrina Carpenter can sound really nasal and pitchy when she tries to belt. I mean, I'll give the producers some credit in trying to disguise it, as they shove more of her belting backing vocals to the back of the mix, along with most of the melodies, and they try to keep things dense enough that you won't immediately notice, especially in the percussion. But with a lot of repeated listens, or whenever that groove gets more stiff, the ugly blockiness of Hold Tight definitely springs to mind, with Amir's overwritten, clumsy, and oddly formless verse not helping any of it. You're quickly reminded of it, and then reminded of everyone else who has done this style better. But you know what, fine. Being derivative isn't exactly bad. The groove on Diamonds Are Forever, it is one of the stronger ones here, and when she can cultivate a more sultry groove like on Paris or Perfect, she gets more to her stride. I can appreciate those songs. But then we have to consider the songwriting, and that's where my patience ran out. I'm sorry, there's just so little here that stands out as good poetry, or that doesn't raise more questions than it answers. Take Sue Me, which apparently is some sort of kiss-off to a real lawsuit from her former management, but instead of adding any real details, it just feels like another self-love kiss-off, and I'm not really a fan of those songs. Or take Paris. I get being enamored of whatever slick Parisian guy is in the picture, and her own inability to take the risks to go after him, that could be compelling, but if she already has love in LA, what makes her all that sympathetic in her cheating here, especially when she clearly is putting in some effort somewhere? Then we have Mona Lisa, where she wants this guy to make a move so that she's not left hanging like the titular painting, and that's the extent of the metaphor. It's just a famous painting that she can reference. Nothing about the art at all, it's just that it's famous and it's recognizable. Granted, that entire song basically feels unfinished and lacking any real bridge or a final hook, but it's emblematic of the shallowness that pervades this album, coming through most on Diamonds Are Forever, where she piles on comparisons to money and opulence directly to her, almost quite literally framing her as a trophy. But you know what, fine. It's shallow, it's materialistic, so what? It's flighty. There is room for that sort of melodrama in pop. But normally if you want to sell it, you need some original personality or uniqueness or flair that Sabrina Carpenter just does not bring with this. For an album called Singular, it is alarmingly easy to point to how many acts she is imitating, and I fail to see the additional acts that will add to this. Now that being said, it's not precisely bad. Again, for as disposable as it is, there is some polish this time around, and a few grooves will stick the landing, so I'm giving it an extremely light 5 out of 10 and only really a recommendation to the diehard fans. Everybody else, you've already forgotten this came out a month ago. I'd just move on. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Not a lot to say with this one, but again, this is normally the stuff I put on the trailing edge, and if it wasn't for trying to avoid that Zayn album at all cost, this is what you get. When you want to buy or stream the album, links down there below. The Sabrina Carpenter fan base, comments are right there, and I got the poll over there for y'all to tell me how wrong I am. Have fun. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get involved in supporting this channel, or maybe so I could have covered this earlier, the link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even the top 10 list to that schedule. More details right there. If you want to see my schedule, it's on my Instagram, link down there below. And keep in mind, I'm going to be doing some changes to my Patreon the next coming week, so if you don't want to get on board now, I kind of understand. We're going to the end of the year anyway. This sort of thing happens. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.